I'm
hello.
th
Hello, Roger.
so I think we have a good professional quality microphone, and we're recording everything here. So even if one side's lost, we should have everything.
That's what I was hoping for. We have decentralized the recording a tiny bit.
Slightly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is an interview I'm doing for a Dutch community on a website called tweakers.net. It's a pretty big forum. I think once in a while it has like 400,000 active users, something like that. It's been a while since I checked the last stats. Now, they have a subsection there on cryptocurrencies. Like, it took a couple of years before they got the mods convinced to have like a subsection on cryptocurrency. But it's mainly speculation. So I've been gathering a couple of questions from my blog, kane.tweakblocks.com. They offer like a blog service for everybody that has a user account there. You want to just like dive right in and start asking the
Sure.
questions? Sure.
Yeah, that works for me.
Now,
So,
keep in mind, like I haven't done any editing on these questions. I just translated them from Dutch to English. If we go through these and we have a little bit of time left, then I have some more questions that are also asked to me in Dutch, but they weren't specifically from tweakers.net. They were
okay.
some Dutch people on Reddit as well. So, and I'm just going to do it chronologically and name everybody's username.
Okay.
So, first question, don't, well,
I saw the partial list already, so don't
okay,
worry.
yeah. I sent you the question list. Okay, so Sir Dark Angel, he asked, how many babies born in 2030 do you expect to die because of Bitcoin Core based on the current trend?
We can actually probably calculate something approximately close to what the number is. So anybody that doesn't understand this or mocks this sort of thing doesn't understand that more economic growth leads to more children surviving childbirth. And so if you retard the rate of economic growth of the entire world, that means more kids are going to die at childbirth. And so we can calculate it approximately what it's been for the past, and we can calculate approximately what it'll be for the future as well. And maybe even later today, I'll try and make a whole video on that exact topic, because I see a lot of people on the internet mocking the very idea that kids are dying, babies are dying because of less economic freedom, but it's absolutely true without any doubt, and you can, it's provable.
So like with Bitcoin Core, you don't expect there to be a lot of economic freedom?
No, I think that the amount of economic freedom that cryptocurrencies can bring to the world has been delayed by this whole scaling debate. So
Right.
Bitcoin was forced to be adopted
Yeah.
by companies like Microsoft and IBM and Expedia, and anybody and everybody was starting to use it.
Right.
And that adoption came to not only a screeching halt, but then reverse adoption when the
Yeah.
blocks became full.
Yeah.
And the version of Bitcoin that we had from 2009 until around 2015 stopped. And so then everybody stopped using it because the transactions were no longer fast, cheap, and reliable. And by intentional design of Bitcoin Core people, the transactions became slow, expensive, and unreliable. Well, a slow, expensive, and unreliable payment network doesn't bring more economic freedom to the world because people aren't even going to use it. And that's exactly what we've seen happen. So I'm really, really frustrated that the amount of economic freedom that cryptocurrencies in general, not specifically Bitcoin, but in general, the amount of economic freedom they can bring to the world has been delayed by several years because of
Right.
this stupid scaling debate. It's been forced through censorship and propaganda by the Bitcoin Core side.
Do we have stats on like when adoption was ramping up, how much it was actually used for as payments rather than like the transactions being just like speculation? Like, is there?
We can make some guesses about that, but we know that companies accepting it like Microsoft and Dell Computer and
Yeah.
new ed companies like that, they weren't accepting it for speculation.
Right.
They were using
Yeah,
it in
spec-
commerce.
yeah.
And those businesses that clearly were using it in commerce
Right.
stopped accepting Bitcoin when
Yeah.
the blocks became.
Yeah. I mean, it was annoying for businesses, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it
and
was-
I'm one of those business users.
Yeah.
I've been using Bitcoin for payment since 2011 to
Yeah.
pay vendors all over the world. I stopped and I started using Bitcoin Cash instead.
It was annoying for businesses. It was annoying for customers. I mean, what problem are we trying to solve here? You know. Anyway.
Yeah, they initially created a problem, but
Yeah.
that's a whole story. So.
Okay. Next question. This comes from RMX. He's asking, why do you think you have the right to position BCH as Bitcoin, and where is that arrogance coming from?
So I can't speak as to the arrogance. I'm confident in what I'm talking about. I've been involved in Bitcoin full time every single day for 7.5 years. And I think anybody that reads the very title of the white paper says Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And then you look at the roadmap that the current Bitcoin Core developers are proposing for Bitcoin, They don't want it to be a cash system at all. They're openly hostile to the idea of it being used as cash. So Bitcoin Cash, we very clearly say that we want it to be used as cash. Bitcoin Core, they don't want it to be used as cash. I think that's a pretty darn strong argument that Bitcoin Cash is the Bitcoin described in the Bitcoin white paper, and Bitcoin Core is not. And I made a video about that. Maybe you can put it in the show.
Go over, like, it was February 2011 that you first heard about Bitcoin, right? Okay.
Right.
How long after that did you make your first investment into a business?
It was later that same year, I think. Like I bought the very first step were to buy Bitcoins, and there weren't any investable businesses at all at that point. But I started working and doing everything I possibly could to bring more attention to Bitcoin because I knew people were going to start using it as cash.
Did you sell any Bitcoins like that first couple of years? Like the money you invested was just your own fiat money, right?
Yeah, it was all my own fiat money that I earned from my own successful business in Silicon Valley that I had before Bitcoin had ever even been invented.
And you just kept on buying?
I kept on buying the whole way through, and actually I had a Lamborghini before Bitcoin had ever even been invented. I sold my Lamborghini to buy more Bitcoins. That's how committed I was to the future of Bitcoin.
Maybe the Lamborghini companies are not too happy with that. Maybe that will explain. Okay, yeah. Like you have invested in a number of companies, right? Which one of those is the most successful right now?
There's quite a few that are pretty darn successful right now. The most well-known ones would probably be blockchain.info, BitPay, and Kraken. Those are probably the three most well-known ones. So.
And like you're just like one of many investors into these companies, right?
Well, I was the first for all of these. So I was a couple of years before they had any other outside investors. And Shapeshift.io is another one that's pretty popular as well. That I was the first outside investor there.
And are you already starting to see returns of investment that you put into these companies?
Not directly from any of them. I hope someday I'll get some money back out of them. But the only returns I've had was watching the value of the Bitcoins that I was holding go up because of the increased utility for using them in commerce. Not just for speculation, but using them in commerce that was created by companies like BitPay, companies like blockchain.info, companies like Kraken. I guess it's also worth pointing out that all of these exchanges out there that used to be called Bitcoin exchanges, now they're called cryptocurrency exchanges, and that didn't really happen until the blocks became full on Bitcoin, and there's the scaling issue, and then every businessman that was trying to use cryptocurrencies as a currency.
Yeah, it was like Bitcoin 24, and like everything had Bitcoin in the name in the beginning, right? Okay, next question. This is from a guy named Wortelstock, and he is asking, why are people saying that SegWit will change the integrity of the distributed ledger?
So there's some talk about the way in which the signatures are stored in the SegWit transactions. And if you read the definition of a Bitcoin in the original Bitcoin white paper, it says it's a chain of digital signatures. And with SegWit transactions, the digital signatures are stored in a different way. So there's some extra.
Still in there. They're still on the blockchain.
There's some extra nerdy people that are arguing about that. I think that's one of the least important arguments in the whole thing. I think the most important is it usable as a peer-to-peer cash system? And Bitcoin Cash is, Bitcoin Core no longer is.
So his second question from the same guy is, can Bitcoin Cash play a role in comparison with Tangle-based coins when it comes to machine-to-machine integration? So I think like IOTA is a Tangle-based coin, I think.
Right, so I don't know enough about Tangle-based coins like IOTA to have an opinion on that, but I do think it's exciting that cryptocurrencies in general will be able to be used by machines, and like they don't care if you're human or not. Whereas Bank of America or Bank of Japan or Bank of Netherlands isn't going to open in a bank account anytime soon for an AI.
Because of the network effect of money, it kind of makes sense that, like if there is a million different cryptocurrencies, they will all kind of compete, and eventually one will, just like how it happened with social media with Facebook, like when the internet companies in the 90s all blurted out of nowhere. I mean, how many have we left? We just have a couple of giants left. And if you look at Google and Facebook, well, Google is huge, but the social media all went to Facebook, and Google Plus, nobody is on Google Plus. Do you see next to cryptos being like, would it be possible? Do you think it's possible that some crypto that is not trying to be currency is going to become more successful first and bigger than a crypto that wants to be currency?
That seems unlikely unless they accidentally wind up having their non-cryptocurrency act incredibly well as a currency. So money has certain characteristics that make it useful as money. And some of those are that it has to be scarce, it has to be easily transportable, it has to be fungible, it has to be easily recognizable, hard to counterfeit. And it's also worth pointing out that I think money is a social network.
Right.
And the social network effects of money are incredibly important. And Bitcoin used to have this giant first mover advantage that seemed insurmountable.
Right.
And that first advantage has almost completely been destroyed by the stupid policies of Bitcoin Core of intentionally making the fees high and intentionally making the transactions slow and unreliable in the hopes that maybe Lightning Network someday will solve those problems. But Lightning Network isn't here yet. Nobody's using it in commerce for business. They destroyed something that was working right now today in the hopes of creating something that might work tomorrow. That was an incredibly reckless thing to do.
So the last question by Wortelstock is he's saying, so he has listened to a number of your speeches where you were talking about economic freedom, so freedom of trade in crypto, and you were saying that this is required before a country can flourish. Now you're saying it reminded him of the libertarian discussions that he saw on the Bitcoin Talk forum like years ago. But he would like to see it from like a different perspective. Which active role are governments going to play in a Bitcoin economy? How can government still legitimize itself when it loses control over money flow? I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like a big, I mean, government, they have a lot of control. But to be government, they need some kind of control over something, right? Otherwise, they cannot have any influence over society whatsoever. So, like, they have a lot of influence over our economies. I mean, theoretically, it's all supposed to be free market, but in practice, it doesn't always work that out. So, like, if everything's going to be done over Bitcoin Cash, governments will have to start accepting it for taxes. But how they're going to lose a lot of control when. How do you like from a perspective of a government agencies that see this happening, like from their perspective, how do you see this play out?
Yeah, so I was probably one of those libertarians he saw on the Bitcoin forum in the early days talking about how this is going to strip away control from governments. But and philosophically, I would like to strip every last bit of control away from governments because monopolies provide bad quality service at a high price. And so that applies to, cell phones and computers and tennis shoes and legal services as well. So I think the free market can provide all the things the government provides better, faster, cheaper, and more reliably than governments do. But if I were to take a step back and look at this from a government point of view, I think direct taxation on, things like sales tax and income taxes are going to be much, much more difficult to do. But property tax is still, it's hard to pick up your building and move it somewhere else.
At the same time, with Bitcoin, the whole thing can become more transparent. Like in theory, if you pay your taxes to a government, you can exactly track where it goes. Then you know what they're doing with your money. I mean, I think that's an amazing thing that you could, if you have government that's going to do something with the money that you're paying them in taxes. Now you can just check it, and for yourself. You can verify it. You don't have to listen to a journalist telling you, oh, they spent 10 million was that. You have the records right in front of your nose. Anyway,
that would be fantastic if that's the case, but I'm pretty pessimistic on that. And we already see with the U.S. government, they take all this money from people in taxes and then they spend it on the NSA to spy on everybody all over the world, including Americans.
Yeah, that's just the U.S. government. I mean, like, there's going to be other governments, and if there's like 60 governments that's against it, there might be one country that sees a huge opportunity there to start using it, right?
We can hope so.
I hope so. Okay, that was Wortelstock's last question. Next one. This guy named BMFD, he asks, do you think that the fight between the BCH and BTC communities is going to hurt adoption of cryptocurrency in general?
I don't know if it's so much the fighting that's hurt cryptocurrencies in general, but the delaying the scaling of Bitcoin and that's absolutely delayed the adoption of cryptocurrency around the entire world. And it was looking at one point where pretty much, and the network effect of Bitcoin came to a grinding halt. Yeah. And so, of course, we've been delayed by several years as far as adoption of cryptocurrencies around the world goes. So it's had a hugely detrimental impact on that, and it's really frustrating.
How many years do you think with Bitcoin Cash, like, until we're equal to where we were? You think we can do that in another 4 or 5 years, or?
Yeah, I think 4 or 5 years we'll be able to do it, but that's a long time, right?
Crazy stuff can happen in 5 years,
Right.
Okay, he's also saying, the same guy is also saying, would it not be better if both parties focus more on themselves and the positive impact they have instead of constantly attacking each other?
Sure, I agree. But if you look at what happened, there's a Bitcoin described in the Bitcoin white paper, and a bunch of people hijacked that project and morphed it into something that's not described in the white paper and insisted on keeping the Bitcoin name and the Bitcoin BTC ticker symbol. So, of course, the people like myself and a whole bunch of others that got involved with Bitcoin, the one that was described in the original Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, of course, we're mad that the entire project got hijacked and that those people are trying to hijack the
They're
name.
saying, you know what, like, so what? There's a white paper. We don't really want to follow that anymore. I mean, it's not. They're saying that Satoshi didn't know everything, and maybe it wasn't designed perfectly. So we're going to kind of turn it in direction, and we have consensus because we have the most hash rate. That's kind of the argument that they have at the moment.
Yeah, that's the argument. But it's worth pointing out that consensus isn't consensus when you got it through a whole bunch of censorship. And I invite anybody to go out there on Google and Google our Bitcoin censorship, and your jaw will drop when you see the amount of manipulation and censorship that's going on right now to this very day. And before the censorship started, the community was overwhelmingly in favor of on-chain scaling as outlined by the original Bitcoin white paper. And it wasn't until the censorship started that they managed to divert the entire roadmap of the Bitcoin ecosystem.
It's kind of hard for, like, especially on the internet, you know, you don't know, like, if one guy is, if 100 accounts is one guy or, like, 100 guys, right? And it's just like, I mean, it took me a very long time to figure it out. In the beginning, it was just like small blockers versus big blockers, and they seem to both make very good arguments. And I didn't know enough about Bitcoin to know who was telling the truth, and he was kind of bamboozling me.
Sure. So there were other polls in which people voted with the amount of Bitcoins they had,
Right.
and you can't fake. And so when you looked at that website, it was called Bitcoinocracy originally,
Really?
.com or .org, and it was like 85% in favor of on-chain scaling and 15%.
What year was that polling done?
It probably got started in 2014, I would guess.
Would it not-
I'd have to go back and check.
Would it
the
not be
Internet
really
archive.
cool and important that we build something into Bitcoin Cash so we can just poll the people that have Bitcoin Cash? I mean, it's not perfect because somebody that has half of the Bitcoin Cash will have the poll will be in his favor, but still it will give an indication versus to go on social media. If it then doesn't line up, then okay, who's talking that doesn't have Bitcoin Cash, right?
Yeah, so we have something similar right now online at vote.bitcoin.com, and it's been a month or two since I've taken a look at that. But it's something very similar
We
exists
should
right now at
focus on that
vote.bitcoin.
again so that people cannot get bamboozled, because consensus on the network with miners is one thing, but there's users too, and they're not miners. They would like to have a voice as well, but how do we know, who the users are, right? Anybody can say anything. If you're a miner, you can prove it, and if it's done cryptographically, it can all be proven. But on social media and on the internet, you have no idea otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. This last question that BMFD is asking, do you understand that some people see it as deception when you try to profile BCH as Bitcoin?
Yeah, and those people that see that as deception are the ones who have been deceived, not by me, but by the Bitcoin core people, claiming that the current version of BTC is Bitcoin. And I actually made a great video, if I do say so myself, about this just maybe 3 weeks ago, explaining why Bitcoin Cash has more characteristics of Bitcoin than the current version of BTC does. And I used for sources, I used the Bitcoin white paper, I used Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, and I use bitcoin.org, and hopefully you can put a link to that in the show notes for this as well. And I explain why both BTC and BCH have some characteristics of Bitcoin, but BCH has far more characteristics of Bitcoin as described originally and as created originally than BTC at this point. So if you think that BTC is Bitcoin, you've been deceived, but not by me. You've been deceived by the Bitcoin core supporters using their censorship and sock puppets on the internet.
Again, they're saying, oh, well, we have the ticker symbol and we have the maximum hash rate, and so, well, I mean, like, it looks to a lot of people like the whole world has chosen. That's how it looks like. From an outsider's perspective, that's maybe not in all these English communities. Their sources might not be so good, and they just see, well, they see the price is higher, they see the hash rate is higher, and they make a
And it's possible that they've been fooled, right? I think, in fact, I would argue that they've been fooled. They have been fooled by the censorship and propaganda put out by the Bitcoin core people, and anybody that spends the time to read the Bitcoin white paper and stop to think about it. And even if you didn't know the name of BTC or BCH, if you just knew the details of each of those systems, would come to the conclusion that BCH
Right.
is the coin that's described in the Bitcoin
So
white paper. It's not
it
BTC.
looks like one of the things that went wrong is that we did not educate users. We did not educate the people that were interested enough. If we would have, they might have not gotten. If it was true that they were bamboozled, if they had had better education, that might have played out differently. I think. I mean, isn't that kind of the biggest defense against like propaganda and like ignorance is just like education, right? Like, I mean, like,
Yeah, my own biggest mistake was underestimating just how effective the propaganda was going to be, because when the censorship first started, nobody believed that. Everybody knew what the truth was. But a whole bunch of additional people who came to Bitcoin after the censorship already
yeah,
started, they were only allowed to hear the censorship
yeah,
narrative and the narrative pushed by the censors. And if that's all they heard around them, they believed it, just like every
yeah,
little kid
yeah.
in the world believes in Santa Claus, because every single other person around them
Yeah, and
tells them that
I
Santa
think
Claus
on the
is real.
English communities we're doing okay now, but there is an enormous amount of people that their first language is not English, and they all get a little bit of hearsay here and there. They have no idea about any of this. So I mean, there's still an enormous amount of work to do in other languages because
Well, thank you for helping to translate this into
yeah,
Dutch.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're gonna continue with the questions. ML asks if Bitcoin Cash can offer so much more than other altcoins, why does it need the Bitcoin name?
The Bitcoin name is incredibly important. That's huge marketing. If you ask people, have you heard of Facebook? They'll say, sure. If you ask them, have you heard of, Joe's social media network.com? They'll say no. And if you try to convince somebody to set up an account on Joe's social media network.com, they'll say, nah, I've never heard of that. I'm not interested. Just like, Bitcoin has worldwide name
A lot of
recognition. That's
people
incredibly
seem to
important.
think it's some kind of company or that somebody's buying it, that there's trademarks on it. I mean, like, I like to copy paste the original MIT license where it just said you can basically change anything about it that you'd like. But yeah, and people see it like, and then they see Bitcoin.com and they're like, well, isn't that supposed to be about Bitcoin? And now it's Bitcoin Cash. So what's up with that? Could you tell a little bit about how did you get the domain name and how did it turn into a company called Bitcoin.com?
Yeah, so for the domain name, I bought a bunch of Bitcoins, and then I paid a giant amount of Bitcoins that would be worth a huge amount of money today to buy the domain name, because I wanted to promote
Right.
Bitcoin. I bought it back in 2015, 14 rather, with the intent of using it to
Who
promote
sold it?
Bitcoin.
Who sold it to you?
There's an NDA in place, so I can't
Okay.
say exactly who it
Right.
was or how much money it was, but it was a lot of money. It was a lot of Bitcoins, and I intend to use it to the best of my ability to promote Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin that I'm going to promote is Bitcoin Cash,
Right.
because that's the one I got involved with in 2011. That's the one Gavin Andreessen said he got involved with in 2010. Haipao Yang, the CEO of Via BTC, another fantastic mining pool, said he got involved in 2012. And it's worth noting, I'm the one who translated the Bitcoin white paper with some help into Japanese. Jihan Wu translated the Bitcoin white paper into
Shit.
Chinese and brought it to China. So all of these early
Right.
people involved in Bitcoin, we're all Bitcoin Cash supporters
Right.
today.
Right. Okay. Let's continue. Another. Well, you know what? Let's. I have to do these. Booster is asking, why are you giving the cryptocurrency world such a bad name by trying to deceive people with your fake coin?
So the person that's asking the question is the one who's been deceived. I would ask them to keep an open mind and read the Bitcoin white paper and
What if
ask
they don't
yourself,
understand it?
is that, and if you don't understand, then you shouldn't have an opinion on the
Right. Okay.
subject. Plain and simple. You shouldn't have an opinion on subjects that you don't understand. And it's incredibly irresponsible to have super loud vocal
That
opinions
you
on
don't
things
understand.
that you don't understand. So if you're incapable of understanding the Bitcoin white paper, you should not have an opinion on Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin Core. It's that
Okay. I
simple.
have to ask. Like, do you program? Are you a programmer?
I've done some coding in the past, but my main career
You're
is
a
not a
business guy.
programmer. But
Okay.
I started a tech company in Silicon Valley, running a very successful tech company there previously. I, they love to say that I'm not a technical person, but sure, I'm not spending all day writing code, but that doesn't mean I'm incapable of understanding
Right.
that. So I've built all sorts of websites. I've done all
Right.
sorts of technical stuff my entire life. I've been using computers since I was in elementary school, installing hardware and taking things in and out. And I'm
The
not a
coders
noob when
that
it comes
work
to
for
tech.
your company, Bitcoin.com, like what are they spending their most time on? Is it like just the website, or just like what's the hardest to implement that takes the most time for the coders?
We're working on quite a few things. Probably the most technically demanding project is we're writing a whole new mining pool software backend from scratch, and we're getting close to having a completely new version of that. But we're also busy on
So
lots
you
of other
mean like
stuff
a
as
full
well.
node implementation, or
No, it's not a full node implementation. It's the calculating all the shares and sending and
for the
receiving the
mining
shares from the
pools?
different
Yeah, yeah,
miners.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
yeah, and calculating who gets
So
what. And yeah, there's
you have a
moving
mining
pieces.
pool. Is that also called Bitcoin.com?
Yeah, if you go to pool.bitcoin.com, anybody can join
What
our mining pool right
what
there as
hash
well.
rate do you have for like the BT? Are you only mining BCH or also BTC?
So the hash rate that belongs to me with Bitcoin.com, that's only mining BCH. But the users that are on our pool can
Both.
choose to mine whichever coin they want. And we built a system that allows the miners to switch automatically to whichever coin is more
Right.
profitable. And that was the code that
I
we
think
then given
most
to.
miners
Yeah,
have that in place, right? So that whatever's most,
yeah, that was most of the miners that are using that. They're using our code. We made that and then gave it to the other
so the
miners so they could
coders that
use
are
it as well.
working
So
for you, they wrote that so that automatically people can switch without having to anything to do, so they can just make the most amount of money. Okay.
that's right.
Where were we? Well, all these questions are kind of the same, so I'm gonna make a couple of jumps here. Mindful consumer, he asks, what can be done to prevent BCH from getting compromised like BTC?
Man, that's the question that I struggle with the most, and I don't have an answer for that.
What did we do
It's,
wrong? What was the biggest thing that went wrong in the community? Like, I mean, the system
but
is
I
decentralized, but within communities, you need leadership, you need organization, or it kind of becomes a mess.
I think the biggest mistake that I see that the Bitcoin community as a whole made was not speaking up even more strongly against the
Right,
censorship when it
right,
started. And the censorship should have been absolutely unforgivable
right.
and intolerable by
So we were a
everybody.
little bit too
But
naive
the
in the
part,
beginning, like,
yeah, but the part that's really shocking to me is that there's a big, substantial part of the Bitcoin core community that says that they don't have a problem with the censorship and they think it's a good thing. And to me, that's just
brings me
my
brings me to
worldview is not
a
compatible with that.
question that I have here open as well. These are kind of my extra questions. What I have to click on file and open. Let's see, where is it? These are my extra questions. You probably know this guy, Aaron van Weerdum. Is a Dutch guy.
Yep.
He writes for the Bitcoin magazine, I think. Um, he is asking you, what do you think the difference is between moderation and censorship?
So I think the difference between moderation and censorship are very different. So censorship is when you just plain delete anybody's post that's not in line with your opinion, but you still promote your entire platform as if it's some sort of free and open discussion platform, which is exactly what our Bitcoin does. They promote themselves to the world as if it's a discussion
Right,
platform for people to talk about
right.
Bitcoin, and yet they instantly delete anybody's post that's not in line with their current narrative. I don't complain much about what Thamos does on BitcoinTalk.org because that's his
Right.
website and he can do
But
what he wants
Reddit
to.
is, yeah.
But Reddit promotes
And
itself to the world
Reddit
as a
has
discussion
rules
platform.
like for moderators and stuff that that they kind of have to follow. I mean, but if Bitcoin were a brand name, then you could go to Reddit and be like, well, hey, they're representing us wrong. Can we please have ownership back? But you can't do it with open source stuff, right? And Aram van Weerdam, he is apparently convinced that there is a lot of censorship on RBTC as well, and he's saying,
So hey, Aaron, if when you watch this, you're a liar. The moderation logs for our BTC are completely open, so anybody anywhere in the world can read
so where
exactly
do we
what's being
go?
modded.
What's the website to go to read the moderation logs?
Reddit.com/r/BTC and then scroll to the bottom right hand side of the page and there'll be a link to the moderation logs where everybody can see exactly what the moderation actions are. And people have been screaming for years to make the moderation logs public on our Bitcoin so people can see exactly how crazy the censorship that's going on over there is. So, Aaron, you're being disingenuous when you say that, actually, you know what, Aaron? You're being a liar when you say that our BTC is censored. When you know for yourself, you can go and look at the moderation logs right there, whereas the moderation logs for our Bitcoin are completely
So
hidden from the world. So
how do
stop
you
lying.
suggest that just a user that has no idea if he's lying or you're lying? How does he figure that out for himself?
Go to Google and type in "our Bitcoin censorship," and there are a series of fantastic articles put together by a guy named John Block, where he documents very clearly with screenshots and links and evidence to the censorship that's been going on on our Bitcoin. It's not only deleting posts, it's actually selectively deleting posts. So for example, if one person says something and the the next guy says why it's wrong, and then the third guy says, I agree, agreeing to the guy who's saying why the first post is wrong, they've then deleted the middle post. So the guy who says, I agree, looks like he's then agreeing to the exact opposite of what he's agreeing to. And that's gone on numerous times on our Bitcoin.
Do you think we could build a website where we can just see everything live, like a website that looks just like our Bitcoin, where we could just see everything live, like maybe a comparison, so you could see like the censorship going on live?
It would be nice to get that, but again, the network effect is so incredibly strong with our Bitcoin. It has more people discussing Bitcoin than probably every single other forum on the internet combined. And that's an incredibly difficult network effect to overcome. And the fact that they're able to censor that,
there again, it's only English, so we still have the opportunity to go to different languages and do it better. So at least it's open, so at least everybody's voice can be heard. Okay.
That's true.
Stefanovic92, he's asking, what do you think about the fact that if Bitcoin gets really successful, blocks will have to be gigabytes and maybe even terabyte big to be able to fit in all the transactions?
I think that's just fine. So I've been selling networking equipment for several decades before I got involved in Bitcoin. And so, my first modem was a 2400 baud modem, and today my company's selling 100 gigabit transceivers. So that's a several million times increase over a few years there. The same thing can happen with storage and bandwidth, and it's going to continue to happen. So someday having terabyte, not gigabyte, terabyte blocks won't even remotely be a problem at some point in the future as well. But the fact that people are complaining about maybe having 2 megabyte blocks today is absolute crazy. An average home computer today can handle 100 megabyte blocks without much trouble at all.
Okay, VDV1 is asking if there's other cryptocurrency that, except for Bitcoin Cash, that you're interested in. I understand that you also were one of the investors into Ripple when they just started.
Sure. So the idea, I put up the seed money to start Ripple as well, although at the time we didn't really know what Ripple was going to be. The idea was to make Bitcoin without mining.
Right.
And that was the original.
How do you feel about Ripple nowadays?
I think it's an incredibly huge improvement over to the traditional banks. I think actual cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin Cash or others are an incredible improvement over things like Ripple. Right. But don't underestimate the power of things like Ripple, because it operates 24/7. Your normal bank account doesn't do that.
What's the name for is Ripple just a better version of Swift, but we shouldn't call it a cryptocurrency, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I guess you could say that Ripple's a much better version of Swift. And I'm not a Ripple expert, to be honest. I focus all of my time on Bitcoin at this point. But from what I do know about Ripple, it's way better than traditional banking system. But it's similar to a traditional banking system that they can freeze your account if they want to.
Right. Do you hold a lot of Ripple yourself?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you hold a lot of Ripple yourself? XPR.
I do have some XPR. But I'm much more interested in Bitcoin Cash, and that's why I'm busy promoting Bitcoin Cash, because I think Bitcoin Cash has the ability to bring more economic freedom to the world. Whereas XRP, I'm not as optimistic on that front, but I do think XRP has the ability to bring a whole lot more economic efficiency to the world, and that's a good thing too.
Cox Trading is asking, you had that one interview where you flipped the guy off. How do you feel about that now?
I wish I hadn't flipped the guy off. I wish I hadn't given him any of my time. His goal from the beginning of that interview wasn't to have a serious discussion about the scaling issues. His goal was to push my buttons, just like when Borat secretly gets an interview with somebody and just says the craziest stuff he possibly can to get them riled up. That's what this guy did to me, and he succeeded. And I apologize for having given him the middle finger and having lost my cool. I shouldn't have, but he succeeded in what he set out to do.
That brings me to another question. I don't have it on my notepad directly. Let me just see. Well, somebody asked well, I didn't know too much about you in the beginning. I wasn't very active in the beginning of Bitcoin. I would look at it once in a while because you could only really speculate with it. There wasn't any yours or in 2011, 2012 there were hardly any places that you could do anything with it, and the software was kind of annoying. I mean, there was only really full node software, but this guy was saying, when you were doing all these investments. People in the Bitcoin community were pretty pleased with you, and they even gave you the name Bitcoin Jesus. I don't know where that came from. Uh, but now it's kind of like for at least a group of people that we don't know how big they are, who has any idea about that. He was saying like are you getting like that? How do you like? I mean, the atmosphere has changed a lot. Like, are you getting like death threats and stuff now? Like, how much pressure is this putting on you that you have like this resistance and this like, I mean, it's a voice that's pretty big on the internet. I mean, like I know this because it flips from English all the way to like Dutch, and then it's kind of there where I go on the internet, and then I'm typing something about Bitcoin Cash, and I'm not trying to stir up any controversy. I just like to talk about Bitcoin, just like how I talked about Bitcoin in 2011. Nothing has changed there from my perspective. I'm just excited that finally I can use the software for something useful, because I'm not a speculator. So now I can finally interact with it and learn how the software works, because it has a function in my life, and it wasn't back then. And how do you feel about that? Like the atmosphere has changed and the pressure is now like you know sorry, that was kind of an
Yeah,
unclear question, but
no, I exactly, and I guess the answer is I don't worry about it at all, because anybody that was involved in Bitcoin before the censorship
right,
started knows the truth. And so, like anybody, like I didn't know you before
right,
today. I didn't know you've been involved in Bitcoin since 2011, but just about anybody who was involved since 2011, 2012, 2013, they all know the truth.
yeah,
They know that Bitcoin Cash is the version of Bitcoin described in the Bitcoin white paper. The fact that people on the internet call it names like B Cash or B Trash or a scam or this and that, name calling isn't an argument, and it doesn't mean that it's
right.
true. Like Bitcoin Cash works as cash for the entire world. Sadly, BTC no longer does, and that's really disappointing for anybody that's been involved in Bitcoin for a long time. So anybody who's been involved for Bitcoin for a long time, I get emails every single day from people saying, Roger, thank you for continuing to speak the
Right.
truth. Thank you for standing up for this. And I get occasional emails from people that came to Bitcoin after the censorship, and they say, why don't you give up? Everybody hates you. But the only people that hate me are people that were fooled by the censorship. Anybody that was around before the censorship starts loves me, loves what I'm doing, and is fully supportive of what I'm
Have you
doing.
ever read any books on like propaganda? Like, have you ever read like the sections on propaganda that Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf, or like Chomsky's book on like manufacturing consent? Have you ever read any of those books?
No, I probably should, to be honest, but I haven't.
Yeah, like I'm not super familiar, but I heard about these books and I've done some research, but I was like a long time ago. But then to like see the effects of propaganda like in your own life is like it's an eye opener. It's shockingly effective. I mean, are we still good on time? Because we've been at it for like
We're good. I asked someone to answer my phone
okay.
for me. So
We have seen on social media, like with the elections and stuff, like we've seen a shift in the world a little bit. Like it's like it's like the powers, they've let the internet play along whatever they want to do, and now they're like, okay, now we're going to use it to do our thing with it. I mean, the Donald Trump elections is probably like the biggest thing. Like he didn't even advertise; he was just on social media, and he won the elections. Now everybody in the whole world is like, okay, well, that's what we're doing next. Like it's what do you see, like what's going to happen in the future if this starts ramping up? It's going to be hard for people to figure out the truth.
yeah, I guess the answer is more discussion, not less. But the really, really hard part, and I hope someone can solve this problem, but I would love to see some sort of solution, like a proof of human
Proof of you.
thing, when people and proof on like not being a duplicate human online, but without being able to track your identity back to which human you are.
What do you want
Because
everybody to
a lot
sample
of
their
these
DNA and then encode it into the blockchain?
yeah, I don't know how to solve this
Right.
problem, but it would be really nice if we could figure out a way to have, like, when people are posting things on the internet, to have some sort of proof of human
But that
uh,
can go wrong
type
as
thing.
well when before you know it, your access to the internet is gone because you have to prove you're human first, and you might want to be anonymous or.
Right? It's a hard problem to solve, and I don't know what the solution there is, but I feel like there's a huge amount of room for improvement from the current system that we have in regards to
Okay,
that
let's see
today.
for a couple more questions that we have here. Let's see, we've had these ones here. Oh, this one is I don't know how this guy has a username I can't pronounce. It's just like underscores and it's like a smiley face. He's asking, why did you move to Japan? What is the best thing and the worst thing about no longer being an American citizen? And why did you become a citizen how do you say that, Saint Kitts?
Think it-
Why? Yeah.
Yep.
What's the story there?
So, long ago, I feel like I was treated incredibly unfairly by the U.S. government, and actually did some time in federal prison in the U.S. And I knew I didn't want to ever live in the U.S. ever again. So the day I was allowed to leave the U.S., I left the U.S. and haven't lived there since. Um, in regards to Japan, I had a Japanese girlfriend before, and it was a good experience. So at the time, I figured there were more to be had in Japan, so that's why I wound up in Japan. But if I had had a Dutch girlfriend before, I would have wound up in Holland. It was just kind of by luck that it wound up being Japan. But Japan's a great place with lots of nice people and great food, and I like Japan a lot. And St. Kitts is also a fantastic place. I've actually spent more time this year in St. Kitts than Japan, and St. Kitts is fantastic too, and having a St. Kitts passport is fantastic. And my only regret in regards to renouncing my U.S. citizenship is that I didn't do it sooner.
Right. How is Bitcoin adoption doing in or Bitcoin Cash adoption doing in Saint Kitts?
I think it may be one of the highest per capita uses of Bitcoin Cash in the entire world here before the end of the year. So look for very, very, very big news coming from St. Kitts on that
And
front soon.
does that have something to do with you? I would assume.
Of course, a lucky guess. Yes, absolutely. No.
So, like, right now we are feeling hopeful for the future.
Yeah, I feel hopeful for the future. Just like the future is always getting better and better and better. And in regards to Bitcoin Cash, it's usable as cash, whereas Bitcoin Core is basically just kind of usable as speculation at this point. So the future of Bitcoin Cash is much brighter than the future of Bitcoin Core.
Do you think that somewhere in the future won't have to talk about Bitcoin Core anymore?
I don't think it's going. I don't think it's likely to disappear. I think it'll stick around, but I don't think it's likely to get. Its pace of growth won't be as big as the pace of growth
Right.
of Bitcoin Cash and other coins
So
for
you're
that matter.
saying whoever is the better product will always outgrow whatever is the worst product, right?
I think marketing is incredibly
Right.
important as well. Don't underestimate the power of marketing. But at the end of the day, now we have the internet where people can market their
Right.
things. And I did a pretty good job marketing Bitcoin in the early days. I intend to put all that effort and time and resources into marketing Bitcoin Cash today, and I think that'll have a pretty big effect as well.
Okay. So how many more minutes do I have before you have to go?
Yeah, if you have more questions, go for
Okay,
it.
yeah. Yeah, I probably have some questions of my own. I would say. What I still like, I've never what I remember from you is I think the first time I've heard your name like in 2011, 2012 as like, the investor and that kind of stuff. And then Mt. Gox kind of happened. I had a little bit of coins on Mt. Gox, not too many. Like back then it was such a small amount that it didn't really matter that much. Now, of course, everybody kind of regrets that, but yeah, one interesting question is how many bitcoins or how many crypto have you lost so far, like by making mistakes and stuff?
Um, the only crypto Bitcoins I lost were before Mt. Gox. There was another company called
Yeah,
Bitcoinica
yeah,
that you could interest on your
yeah. I
Bitcoins.
wasn't
And I
that.
lost.
Yeah, I traded on that.
Yeah, I think I lost 26,000 Bitcoins on there, so that kind of
Right.
hurts. And a lot of people don't realize that the software code
It's
for Bitcoinica
Bitfinex.
is
Yeah.
what went on.
Yeah, I
Is
know, I know.
Bitfinex, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
only
moved with Bitcoinica to
timers know
Bitfinex.
that.
I didn't lose any. I didn't lose any coins because they got stolen, but I got liquidated once on Bitcoinica and then once on Bitfinex again. So at least I'm responsible for my own screw up. So
Yeah, and I didn't lose any crypto coins on Bitfinex, but I had some dollars deposited there because I wanted to earn interest on the
Right.
dollars, and then gave me a haircut on the dollars I had deposited at Bitfinex.
Right.
So that
So
kind of counts.
how do you
But
feel about Bitfinex now? Like, are you the last biggest news kind of was they had like a Polish bank account that got raided, but don't know how much it had to do with Bitfinex. We just know that it was one of their banking partners. And then there's Tether, and you can kind of like the amount of tethers that have been released goes kind of hand in hand with the crazy Bitcoin rally in 2017. So, like, how do you feel about that? Because it's like about 30% of the whole entire market, and if people would lose faith in that, what would that do to the market and to the prices of all the cryptos?
yeah, I guess the real question is: are those tethers actually backed by real dollars in a bank somewhere? That's the couple $1 billion question
Right.
at this point. And it would be nice to have some clearer insight into that.
Well,
But
it isn't the motto a little bit like verify, don't trust within the Bitcoin space? Like, shouldn't that stuff get verified instead of we just trusting that they have it?
I think maybe the motto should be trust and
Right.
verify. Uh, but right now, there's only trust with that. There hasn't been any verification that I'm
So
aware of.
what
So,
would
but
happen if some like evidence would leak out that they have like only $100 million or no money, whatever? What do you think? What could it possibly do to the market?
I think the value of all the tethers would plummet. I don't. That's my initial reaction. Is the price of the tethers would go from $1 down to
So
10
then
cents
only
or
the
less.
only people on
I
tether
don't.
exchanges would lose a lot of money, and the rest of the exchanges would still be fine.
I'd have to give that some more thought. But my initial reaction, I think it would drag the market down as a whole somewhat. But the real bag holders would be the people sitting
If the
on those
market
tethers.
goes down too much, do you think it will hurt adoption?
No, because Bitcoin Cash works the same at $1 as it does at $1,000 or $10,000. You can use it for
Right,
payments,
right.
so I'm
Do
not
you think it
worried about it.
actually
So for the
it might
for,
actually be a
yeah,
good
for the
thing
old timers, remember,
if the market
and you're yeah, maybe it's a good thing. More people can get in cheap. And for the old timers, probably like yourself, who remember in 2012, I set up BitcoinStore.com, which was the first basically major e-commerce website to start accepting Bitcoin for payments for more than 500,000 items at prices cheaper than Amazon for
right,
most of them. And the price of Bitcoin when we launched that was like, I don't know, $8 each or something like that. And it worked
right, right,
great.
right.
It was no problem at all.
Okay, well, yeah, I think I have kind of asked most of my questions. I don't want to take too much of your time, and I think we've already done a.
If I can add a couple of little things, I guess, for the
Yeah,
end there
sure.
too, like for for people that are interested in the history of Bitcoin, there are two fantastic books that kind of explain what happened. One is called Digital Gold by
Yeah,
Nathaniel Popper, and it reads just like a science fiction novel, except for everything in it is true. And you can read all about the early days of Bitcoin and how things happened. And another one is called How Money Got Free, and the author's name is escaping me at the moment, Brian Eha. And that's another great book that explains the early days of Bitcoin and everything that was happening. And those are both really fun books. And I received my very first Bitcoin ever from a Bitcoin
by
faucet being
Gavin. Yeah.
ran by Gavin Andreessen. Maybe you
No,
got
no, I
yours from
didn't.
that
I actually
faucet as
paid
well.
money for that. I
So anyhow, faucets still exist today on Bitcoin Cash. Anybody in the world can go to
yeah.
free.bitcoin.com and get some free Bitcoin Cash. Faucets don't exist for Bitcoin Core any longer because the fees are too high. So I invite anybody to go to free.bitcoin.com and get some free Bitcoin Cash and try it out. And if you don't like Bitcoin Cash, you can then sell it for more Bitcoin Core or whatever else you want. But we invite anybody to go to free.bitcoin.com to get some free Bitcoin Cash and feel the magic of Bitcoin. It works exactly how Bitcoin did from 2009 until like 2015.
Cool. Well, that's kind of it. I don't have any more questions. I mean, just keep it at an hour.
If you can have my phone back, we'll do one more thing right here. So I have paper wallets here to show another thing. So here's a
Well,
paper
no, we're
wallet
not
here.
live streaming, just
I'm
so
the,
you know. This will be later on YouTube.
well,
The
the
first
first
person that
person that
goes,
goes
yeah.
onto YouTube and sees this, we'll send $20 to this. So if you have the Bitcoin.com wallet, the first person that scans this will get the $20. So here we go. I'll let you guys watch on my phone. So here we go. We're going to send $20 to this, and I don't know how clear this is going to come up, but I'll read to you what the amount is. So the fee to send this is $0.00 is the fee. It's 0.01% of the sending amount of $20. So I'm going to hit slide to send, and the money is then going to go to this paper wallet here, and in a second I'll display, I guess I can display
Yeah.
the private key now. So the very first person that scans this private key here with the Bitcoin.com wallet or any other wallet that can scan private keys will get the $20 of Bitcoin Cash. Just like that, and they'll receive the full $20. If I had sent $20 of Bitcoin Core, it would have cost me maybe $20.50, and they'd only wind up receiving like $19.50
Yeah.
at the moment. And then when they'd go to spend it, it would cost another 50 cents to spend it, so they would only be able to send $19. So Bitcoin Core, you lose some of the money every time you use it, whereas with Bitcoin Cash, you don't.
I think the fees are a little lower. I mean, I haven't tested it out, but I think that if you get lucky right now,
I stopped.
right.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure exactly what the fees are on BTC at the moment, but at the same time, we need a currency
Yeah.
that's reliable month after month, low fees every month. Not sometimes it's low and sometimes they're high.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to do that, but yeah, that'll be cool for the first person that watches
Yeah,
this video and is able to scan it with his phone. Whoever gets first, right?
And if you're not the first person, then just go to free.bitcoin.com and we'll give you a little bit of Bitcoin Cash there as well.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you so
welcome.
much.
I'll have to translate everything into Dutch. I mean, like make the subtitles and stuff. But yeah, thanks for this opportunity to interview you for some of the people that have asked me these questions. I've skipped a couple of questions, but we kind of already went over the same questions just by asked by other people. So I was like, what's the point? Thanks, Roger, and I hope you have a nice day in Japan. I don't know what the weather is out there.
It's beautiful. I know it must be really early in the morning for you too.
No,
So
no,
thank you so much
it's
for
nine
making the
o'clock.
time.
I'm in Canada actually. I live in Canada. I immigrated
Ah,
here like 5 years ago. So it's like 9 o'clock in the evening. We had a kind of fresh day, but yesterday it was like 30 degrees or something. So
okay. I was surprised you'd scheduled what I thought it
for
was
at
so
night,
early in the morning
yeah.
in Holland.
No, it doesn't. Can you not see the
That makes,
daylight? Yeah.
I was surprised by that too. I was trying to
Yeah.
figure out like what's on there,
Yeah,
but
we're in
okay, got it.
central Alberta right now in Red Deer. So
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your
yeah,
time and
thanks,
the
Roger. See
opportunity.
you.
Bye bye.